Hi, this is Brandon Steele with Mainsail Financial Group. Welcome to the Mainsail podcast series where we host industry experts and local professionals to really share some insights, some guidance into the areas that we don't get a focus on necessarily day to day here. Today, we want to thank Emily Wortman for joining us to discuss kind of two different areas. She's going to talk a little about the auto and home insurance side of things, but also spend some time towards the end talking a little bit about Medicare and health insurance coverages and some considerations in that arena. Emily is actually co-owner of Phillips Insurance in Bothell, and they're an independent agency that provides personal and commercial insurance with multiple carriers as well. And given the timing of all this, I think it's a good time to start kind of keeping track of things and watching where we're at with insurances. And, we've got a lot of people retiring with COVID and everything going on. So really happy to have you on. I think the timing works out great.
Yeah. So happy to be here. Thank you for
Thanks.
inviting me.
Of course. Yeah. So I guess with that, we can kind of jump right in and obviously here we are, almost end of January, actually, January 2021. We just got through a crazy year and it just seems to kind of continue. But obviously with COVID and everything going on last year in 2020, I was kind of curious how that's impacted your field. Is there any areas of coverage that maybe are changing a bit or people should be looking at in a little different light with everything?
Yeah, I think the thing that most people have been focusing on is that they aren't driving as much. And so for sure, I think it's a good idea to check with your insurance carrier and see if you've got all the discounts in a row, as it were, on if you can qualify for some low mileage discounts or if there might be other discounts you haven't explored. In general, the industry seems to be kind of continuing towards more telematics-based discounts in terms of almost like pay-as-you-go, but not quite discounts and being judged on your driving specifically. But that's really more of a continuation just of the way they were already going.
Sure.
But yeah.
Okay. So actually that's funny you brought that up. I was going to talk a little bit about that too. You mentioned people are driving a little bit less. What are your thoughts? Are you seeing people reduce coverages because of that? And where do you kind of stand with that?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of clients calling to review their insurance more or wanting to lower coverage or remove coverages. In general, I don't like the idea of lowering coverage unless it's financially necessary, because, things can still happen. People are still having accidents. Claims can still happen even when your car is parked, those kinds of things. However, a lot of policies do have the ability to allow you to suspend a vehicle that you're not driving. It's really important to be careful with that, as obviously while it's suspended, there's no coverage for it to be driven. But if you call your agent again and kind of go through those things, they can really guide you in a way to possibly, lowering your premiums if possible.
Okay. That's great. But be cautious of lowering the coverage to do so.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I've heard some stories of people doing that, and I figured that was probably not well advised. So as people are kind of addressing these changes, starting to rethink what they're looking at, can you maybe just share when people are shopping, maybe some things to consider, some areas that may typically be overlooked or, some of those nuances?
Yeah. There's obviously a lot in the breadth of insurance, but I think it's really important when you're shopping that you are looking for value. You're not looking for only price, because you don't want to be downgrading coverage again without understanding that that's what's happening. So I always encourage people to be careful that they're not underinsuring, specifically on homes, making sure their value is appropriate to replace their structure, making sure they have ordinance and law coverage if their home is older in particular. That helps to if they had to rebuild the home or repair it and bring it up to code, and there were extra costs because of that, that pays for that kind of a coverage. On the auto side, making sure that you have gap coverage if you have put very little down on a vehicle and purchased it. That will help if like your car was totaled and you owe more on the loan than what the car is currently worth, that kind of a thing. It's really, holes like that can be kind of like the things where you're like, well, I don't want to pay that extra $15, but then you'd really regret it later. Things like that. So I think the coverage that I see that gets overlooked the most is personal injury protection. A lot of clients see it just as being duplicate coverage because they think it's just a medical coverage and they have health insurance already. But really, personal injury protection is great. It covers a variety of things, not just injury, but also, if you have a higher medical deductible or someone is in the car with you that maybe doesn't have very good medical coverage, it really will help take care of them better as well.
Okay, that's really helpful. So it sounds like looking a little more into what that policy actually covers, not just the surface level limits and stuff like that.
Exactly. Okay. And again, I'll always repeat this, but I think it's just really important to have the advice of an agent, somebody who's a professional who can help you, look at those coverages and really understand, what may or may not be the same.
Sure. Okay. And you mentioned something else in there too. You mentioned something about on the personal injury side of things, the cap on that and some considerations around that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about umbrella policies, how they're used and when they may come into play?
Yeah. So umbrellas are, just a really great tool to protect yourself. They're very inexpensive. They're a great financial planning tool, though, for example. I recommend them really for any homeowner, but even if you're not a homeowner, if you have some substantial savings or retirement savings, or you're nearing the end of your working career in particular, they're just a great way if your auto liability limits are extinguished in a claim, or you have a big home claim for liability where someone's injured because of your negligence, or even just there's a lawsuit trying to assert that you're negligent. The umbrella gives extra liability over top of those policies. So, for example, umbrellas start at $1 million of liability. So it just is an automatic extra barrier before your assets could be taken, before your equity in your home could be affected, or you would, be personally responsible. And an umbrella is a pretty low-cost policy. The pricing varies based on the number of personal items that you have covered on it, but many people can get an umbrella for, $20, $25 a month to start. And I'm sorry, I know you asked a little bit more in that question. Is there a part of that I'm missing?
No, not really. Just kind of a high level on what umbrellas cover and where they might be used, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I guess landlords in particular love an umbrella. It's great if they're getting a lawsuit about something that maybe even their tenant didn't tell them about, and then it's like after the fact, and still as the owner of the property, they maybe have a responsibility, or for even invasion of privacy, wrongful eviction. There's so many ways in which an umbrella can come into play. I would say also, though, I also still really strongly recommend landlords carry or require their tenants to carry their own renter's insurance too. That will also help protect you as a landlord. But yeah, umbrellas are just amazing in insurance world.
That's a good point too on the renter's insurance side of things. But I'll back up everything that you said about umbrellas for planning. I mean, it really can be an effective tool, especially, to your point of a landlord, somebody who has a rental property. You can go other routes to LLCs and stuff like that, but an umbrella can be a very simple way to just get a little extra coverage in place too.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Oh no, that was just agreeing.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think with that, I will switch gears here a little bit. I do want to spend some time talking about the Medicare and the health insurance side of things too. So,
Mhm.
one of the things that I was kind of curious is for those who are, again, we've had so many people retire this year, so I thought it'd be really helpful for a lot of folks. For those who are either looking at changes or retired recently or just turning Medicare age, like what options are available, and how do you kind of get that process started?
Okay. Um, well, I guess there's two kind of questions in there, just because some people who retire are a little bit before Medicare age, and so for them, there's not a whole lot of options in individual plans, and individual plans are fairly expensive, especially compared to what they might be used to on a group employer plan. Hopefully they have some COBRA maybe that they can extend, or something like that. But also, there are sometimes options where if you can control your income, your taxable income enough, that you can still also qualify for tax credits. And so I would just encourage anybody in that position, again, talk to an agent, just kind of see where that level is and if that's feasible for them. But if not, I would just plan on that being a larger expense if you are retiring early. And then as far as like people who are of Medicare age, I love it. I mean, there's so many different options. I think the problem with Medicare is there are so many different avenues and routes and carriers for all sorts of different plans. Um, and it really depends on like what your priorities are and what you need the insurance to do for you. um, you know Everybody who's Medicare age is going to be paying at least their Part B premiums, going forward, for original Medicare. And then the two routes that I see people take most are, they are either looking to maximize the coverage at the point of care. So they don't mind paying a little more in premium ahead of time, but they're really concerned with knowing exactly what that is so they can budget it. Um, and then they're hoping that they really don't have cost sharing like copays and things like that at service. And so the route for that would be like a Medicare supplement plan, which works just in conjunction with original Medicare taking over that cost sharing. Okay. And again, higher premium up front, and you have to buy a drug plan separately, but it has a real place for some people, again, who are looking to maybe pay a little more monthly, but control and, maybe even have fairly large procedures or treatments with little or no cost to them out of pocket. Um, the second option would be for somebody who is a little more cautiously trying to hope, A, that they're going to be healthy for quite a while, hopefully, and then B, that they can lower their costs monthly for those years when they're relatively healthy anyway. And so there's Medicare Advantage plans on the market that start as little as $0 premium monthly. They're great. They basically are taking over original Medicare, and then it's basically the carrier then runs the plan. If that's Regents or Primera or Humana, or again, many options out there. So, the positive on that plan is, again, very low or, possibly no extra premium attached. But you do have a network that you have to adhere to. So, there's a limitation there. And then at the time of service, you definitely do see co-pays and cost sharing as part of that. They're both really great options, though. Like, as somebody who sees a lot of people in individual plans, on my day to day, like, I'm so happy for people when they get to the age where they get to benefit from Medicare.
That comes from somebody who really loves their job doing health.
Well, sure.
So.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I do want to come back. Thank you for bringing the insurance up prior to Medicare age too. Can you maybe just
Mhm.
expand on that a little bit, though? You mentioned that there are some options. There's Cobra, of course, and then some others out there as well that are going to be more expensive. Can you just maybe talk to
Mhm.
that in a little bit more detail?
Sure. I mean, Cobra tends to feel really expensive again to people coming off of a group plan because usually when you're participating fully in the group plan, the employer is taking a lot of the cost on. But sometimes then when you switch to Cobra, the cost increases a lot. Um, but I think a lot of people find then that when they compare Cobra to marketplace plans for individuals, that actually Cobra is not high cost. And so I think it's really important when you start to gather your ducks in a row and think about your options that you know what that Cobra cost looks like and what those plan coverages are. So when you're comparing them to, let's say, a not great plan for individuals, okay, well, yeah, maybe the Cobra is $200 more a month, but this coverage, the deductible is so much lower. It's those kinds of things that I just really encourage people, kind of look at that little, that fine print a little bit more, because I think Cobra definitely has like a reputation for being expensive, again, just in relation to a group plan.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I mean, individual options, there are a lot more of them now than there were a couple years ago. Um, but the individual plans definitely skew towards higher deductible. Um, Basically, you want to have insurance in place. You don't want to have a major situation happen, a heart attack or a surgery that you have to have, and not have something to protect you from the cost of that. And so, in a way, they are very bare bones, and that's unfortunate a lot of the time. But again, um, much better to pay a premium that seems excessive monthly than to pay for the whole surgery itself, I guess,
Sure.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. Um, and then another part that you had kind of touched on, kind of hinted at a little bit, and this would apply to really all of these, but especially the Medicare side of things. What are some
Hmm.
considerations like outside of the typical costs and benefits, things that people need to worry about? For instance, you mentioned, the network, right? So people being able to use
Mm.
their existing doctors. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, kind of going back to the two options that are available, that first option I mentioned, like the Medigap or Medicare supplements, on those, there's no network. Any doctor who accepts Medicare should accept those plans. Um, Same thing with original Medicare. You should be able to go where you want. It's just with adding the supplement, you also have more of the cost sharing taken care of again. Um, there is some even like overseas coverage. It's not a ton of coverage, but there's a little. There's also travel medical though to fill those gaps if people are concerned about that. Um, then back to the Medicare Advantage plans, which are popular for the price, okay? Because those are plans run by carriers. They do have networks, but I mean, I would also say I think that those this is my opinion. I think that those networks, specifically like in King County and Snohomish County, are very generous. They're a larger network, more similar to, again, a group plan than an individual plan network. And so, I mean, often when I'm searching for doctors for clients, they'll have many carriers where they could, choose a plan without fear that their doctors wouldn't be covered. Um, so, the networks are pretty good.
Okay. That's good to hear because I've heard some concerns around that.
Mhm.
So it's good to hear that maybe those are not quite as warranted as it might seem on the surface.
Yeah. I will also say, sorry, one last thing.
Mhm.
Obviously there are some carriers that skew more towards being like an HMO, and there are both HMO and PPO plans available in Medicare Advantage plans, and that like a company, for example, like Kaiser, again, is just more like an HMO always. And so again, probably more limited in their doctors. But if, of course, you've been in that system, that's probably great for you still.
Okay, got it. I think maybe that's a good place to start wrapping up, but I want to ask you, so if somebody has any questions for you specifically or wants to get in touch with you, is there a way for them to reach out?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can look us up on our website, which is just phillipsinsurance.net, or you can call our office or text our office at 425-485-8660. You know, we're always happy to help with advice or comparisons as needed. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was really helpful. I think probably very timely too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really good to, from time to time, take stock of where you're at with this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you guys all for joining us this month on the Mainsail Financial Group podcast series. If you have any questions for us, you can email us directly, info@mainsailfg.com. Again, info@mainsailfg.com. Thank you.